Imagine a room in Beijing. 47 people meet here every month. No cameras, no press releases, just spreadsheets, maps, and one single question: which American industry do we take next? You won't find this room on any official tour. But its decisions explain why your iPhone is assembled in Shenzhen, why half the solar panels in California come from Xinjiang, and why the Pentagon now lies awake worrying about rare earth minerals. This isn't about invasions or missiles. It's about something far more effective. China figured out that you don't need to beat America militarily, you just need to make America need you. And then, very carefully, very patiently, you make yourself irreplaceable. By 2040, the world's most powerful economy might not speak English anymore. Let me show you how they're doing it. Here's what most people miss. When we talk about China rising, we imagine factories and cheap labor. That was 20 years ago. That China is dead. The China operating right now is running a completely different playbook. They're not competing with America. They're replacing the infrastructure that America forgot it depends on. Think about it this way. America won the 20th century by controlling three things: energy, manufacturing, and money. Oil flowed through American companies. Goods were made by American workers or our allies. And the dollar was the currency everyone needed. China looked at that system and asked a simple question: what if we just built a new one? Not loudly, not through threats. Just quietly, steadily, buying up the pieces while America was distracted arguing about tweets and tax cuts. The takeover has already started. Most Americans just haven't noticed yet. Let's start with something you probably have in your pocket right now. Pull out your phone. Inside that device are about 30 different rare earth elements. Neodymium for the speakers, lanthanum for the camera lens, europium for the color display. Completely unremarkable names for completely irreplaceable materials. Now here's the uncomfortable part. China controls 80% of global rare earth processing, not mining, processing. They took the messy, expensive, environmentally destructive part that nobody else wanted to do and turned it into a weapon. In 2010, China got into a territorial dispute with Japan, so Beijing just stopped exporting rare earths to Tokyo. Within weeks, Japanese factories were shutting down. Japan folded immediately. The message was clear: we control the ingredients, process, and your entire economy stops. But rare earths are just the beginning. China now dominates the production of lithium batteries, solar panels, electric vehicle components, pharmaceutical ingredients, and semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Here's a number that should terrify Pentagon planners. 73% of the world's polysilicon comes from one region in China. Polysilicon is what makes solar panels work. The United States government has committed trillions to green energy, and almost all of it runs through Chinese supply chains. America spent 40 years outsourcing manufacturing because it made quarterly earnings reports look better. China spent 40 years quietly buying up every step of every supply chain they could find. The difference: America optimized for profit. China optimized for control, and control, it turns out, is worth more than profit. Now let us talk about the largest infrastructure project in human history that nobody in America seems to take seriously. It's called the Belt and Road Initiative. China calls it a development program. Western economists call it debt-trap diplomacy. Both are right. Here's how it works. China approaches a developing country, let's say Sri Lanka. They offer to build a massive, state-of-the-art port. It costs $1.5 billion. China will loan you the money at reasonable rates. You just have to use Chinese construction companies, Chinese workers, and Chinese equipment. It sounds generous, but here's the catch buried in the fine print. If you can't pay back the loan, China doesn't want your money, they want the port. In 2017, Sri Lanka couldn't make its payments, so China took operational control of Hambantota port for 99 years. The same thing happened in Pakistan with Gwadar port. in Djibouti with a strategic military base, in Kenya with a railway line. This isn't charity, it's collateral collection dressed up as foreign aid. Right now, China has belt and road projects in over 150 countries. They've loaned out over $1 trillion, and dozens of those countries are starting to struggle with repayment. So what does China get? Ports that can dock their naval vessels? Roads and railways that run exactly where Chinese goods need to go. Communications infrastructure that runs on Chinese technology. And governments that suddenly find it very hard to say no to Beijing. The United States spent the last 20 years bombing the Middle East. China spent the last 20 years buying the world's infrastructure. One strategy costs money, the other strategy makes money. And guess which one actually expands your power? But here's where it gets interesting, because China isn't just building roads. They're building the financial system those roads will run on. Since 1944, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency. That means if Brazil wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they do it in dollars. This gives America an almost supernatural power. We can print money, and the whole world has to absorb it. We can freeze countries out of the financial system with sanctions. It's the most powerful economic weapon ever created, and China is systematically dismantling it. They're doing it through something called the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, or CIPS. It's basically China's alternative to SWIFT, the Western-controlled financial messaging system. When Russia got sanctioned in 2022 and cut off from SWIFT, what happened? They started using CIPS. So did Iran. So did dozens of countries that suddenly realized the dollar system isn't neutral. It's an American weapon. But China's going further. They're convincing countries to trade directly in Yuan. In 2023, China finalized a deal with Saudi Arabia to buy oil in Yuan instead of dollars. That's not just symbolic. Saudi oil sales have propped up dollar dominance for 50 years. And then there's the digital yuan. China is building a completely digital currency controlled by the central government. No banks, no middlemen, just instant, traceable, controllable money. Imagine this. It's 2035. Most of Africa, Southeast Asia, and parts of Latin America conduct their trade through CIPS in yuan. The digital yuan is used for instant cross-border payments. And suddenly, American sanctions don't work anymore because entire regions of the global economy just root around the dollar. That's not science fiction. That's China's stated goal, and they're ahead of schedule. The dollar won't disappear overnight. But it doesn't have to. It just has to become optional. And once it's optional, America loses the one advantage no military can replace. Now here's the final piece, and it's the one that should worry you the most. China in trying to out-innovate Silicon Valley in software. They don't care about the next social media app. They're focused on something more fundamental, the physical infrastructure that makes all technology possible. Take semiconductors. Everyone panicked when China struggled to make advanced chips. But here's what they did instead. They cornered the market on older chip technology, the stuff that goes into cars, medical devices, home appliances, industrial equipment. These aren't sexy. They don't get headlines. But modern civilization runs on them, and China now controls about 60% of the global production of these legacy chips. Then there's 5G infrastructure. Huawei got banned from Western markets. But in the developing world, they're everywhere. By 2024, Huawei had installed 5G networks in over 70 countries. Why does that matter? Because 5G isn't just about faster phones. It's about the Internet of Things. Smart cities, autonomous vehicles, industrial automation. Whoever controls the 5G infrastructure controls the nervous system of the future economy. And China's installing that nervous system in most of the world. But the real genius move, China's not trying to beat American companies anymore. They're just making American companies choose. You're Apple. You can either access the Chinese market of 1.4 billion consumers, Or you can decouple your supply chain and lose 20% of your revenue. Your Tesla, you can either build factories in Shanghai, or you can watch BYD take over the global EV market. One by one, American companies are making the same calculation. It's more profitable to cooperate with Beijing than to resist, and once you're dependent on Chinese markets, Chinese supply chains, and Chinese infrastructure, you stop being an American company in any meaningful sense. You become a global company that just happens to be headquartered in California. Beijing doesn't need to own you, they just need to make sure you can't survive without them. So here's where we are. China controls the raw materials. They own the infrastructure, they're building an alternative financial system, and they're making American companies choose between patriotism and profit. This isn't happening in the future, it's happening right now. The American century didn't end with a bang. It's ending with a series of quarterly earnings calls where executives quietly decide that Beijing's demands are just the cost of doing business. By 2040, the question won't be whether China is more powerful than America. The question will be whether America still controls enough of the global system to matter. And here's the really uncomfortable part. I've just spent all this time explaining how China is taking over. But I haven't told you how America stops it. That's because nobody actually knows. Not the Pentagon, not Wall Street, not the White House. We outsourced the future, and China bought it. So that room in Beijing I mentioned at the beginning, the one where 47 people meet every month, they're not asking which American industry to take next anymore. They're deciding which ones to leave us. Thanks for watching.